This is Shane with Greenstone Services. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and we've got a couple things to talk about, interestingly enough. Let's get started. Roll that intro. Things that have been going on and things that have been changing. What's going on with Greenstone? I've not necessarily been quiet, but I've certainly been quiet-ish. There's been a lot. Where to even start? This is a little personal project of mine. It is considered a sub-company of Greenstone, doing video, pictures, etc. It's a 5 to 10 year plan. And over the next 5 or 10 years, I'm expecting to get things set up in my studio here for stop motion, because that's something that really interests me and it's fun. I love this stuff. The second thing that I'm going to get set up for here is for doing video shoots, documentaries, commercials, that kind of a thing. I've got something that I'm working with a customer that I'm not going to talk about because there hasn't necessarily been ND agreements made, but it's mutually understood it's best for everybody if we just keep this under wraps until it's released. And then there's a couple other things that are going on. I've landed what is going to be our first documentary, and it will be fairly interesting. It will be based in Kentucky, and it will be about the history of one place. Of course, that's most documentaries, but there's a couple of things that make it just a little bit different. Now, with those things being said, the whole net neutrality thing, a lot of people think that it's dead, and technically speaking, it has been voted on. But there's some other things that have been happening too, and it's not quite dead yet. Ajit Pai threw a temper tantrum, and I don't know why he has such a bane about this. I've actually got something that I wrote up that I was going to make a video on, but I don't have anything set up on that side of the office space yet for recording the Greenstone stuff. Because one, I've been super busy, which is awesome. To the point of working sometimes 12 and 14 hours a day, not necessarily taking pictures and recording video, but with the main thing I do, which is supporting my customers. With me working so much and trying to make sure that I keep everybody's things that I'm supposed to have done, etc., and a couple of things that have happened in town with a lot of the rain, a lot of flooding, it's been something that's been kind of not necessarily on the back burner, but again, it's 5 to 10 years plan. So I don't want you guys to think that I've ignored it. I haven't. But the tech world has been kind of quiet. The major stories has been, yeah, Bitcoin. But the other part of it is net neutrality. So we'll get into all those now. On, of course, cryptocurrency, everybody that asks me this, I have the same response. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a long game, but you have to be willing to make short investments in order to get anywhere with it. If you have a normal job where you have to sit at a desk or get behind the wheel of a vehicle and go here, and here, and do all kinds of things during the course of the day, it's probably not going to be so much for you, because these are the sorts of things that require that back-end microtransaction type mentality of I'm watching the markets, I'm investing, I'm pulling, I'm selling, I'm grabbing this, I'm doing this. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And the people that can donate their time to such a thing, they're the ones that will be able to make a lot of money. If by chance you're not able to do that, you're probably going to have a hard time with it. The most important piece of advice I can give anybody whenever it comes to cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency, which is everything in general, is one, if it's not a mainline, people get excited, like mainline being Ethereum and Bitcoin, others like that. But if it's not a mainline currency that's crypto or electronic, then you need to make sure that what you're investing in isn't just somebody that said, hey, I got this idea. I'm going to make a Cat 5 coin, and it's going to be awesome. There's a reason why I'm saying that, and that, of course, has to do with Bitcoin. That guy, right? And yes, it's a meme, but I kind of find it a little funny, but I find it incredibly disastrous for cryptocurrency altogether. Simply because it's not something that is regulated like banks are, and anybody can say, I'm making a coin, and if they can get enough investors, like a Ponzi scheme, get this group to pay for this group to pay for this group, then it may look like there's actually something that is legitimate that's happening here, but it's not. So, with that being said, make sure that you do your research if you want to get into it. I'm not saying don't do it, but I am saying treat your money like you're lighting a fire with it, because if you can't lose it and not miss a mill, don't invest it. It's that simple. Now, after you start investing and you get some money built up inside of it, and it's money that you've made in there and you lose all that, that's going to be a little upsetting, but you haven't missed your mortgage, or you didn't double mortgage your house, or you didn't max out your credit cards, which is kind of another thing, because banks are making it more difficult now to get cash advances on your credit cards whenever it comes to tax, because if they find out that it was for Bitcoin type things, or if they find out it's for cryptocurrency type things, then there's a higher tax rate for it on paying it back. And rightfully so, because that's going to help prevent people that don't need to be investing, that it's going to hurt whenever they lose everything, from getting hurt. That's my only concern about cryptocurrency, is make sure that if you've got an extra $20 or $40 a week, that you save it. If you've got an extra $200 to $300 a week, that you save it. You buy something that's legitimate and has a pretty good, outcome expected. Treat it as a long game, but make all those short transactions, you'll be all right. There's another side to that cryptocurrency coin that I get asked a lot about, and that is, how do I mine? Wow, such a simple question, such a complex answer. You can technically mine with anything that has a decent video card in it. And by decent, 4 gig or higher, that kind of a thing. But that's also a generality in the statement that I just made, because some cryptocurrencies and tracking algorithms, etc., won't work on just general hardware. It has to have very specific hardware in order for it to do what it wants to do. Now, how does that side of this work? How do people make money by mining cryptocurrency? Not the same term as what they're using with malware. Mining as in doing the work for all the stop checks and making sure that the currency is doing what it's supposed to. Essentially, their computers do all the work to make sure that all the transactions are indeed legitimized and etc. So that's again a generality, but that's kind of how that works. You have to find out with what cryptocurrency you're using, what they prefer, what they want. And then also you need to think about this. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of machines that do this now. And if you're not part of a group, because groups make up big things now in cryptocurrency that you're a member of, then whenever that stop check happens, then you won't have anything at all. And those groups are getting to the point where they're so big now that it's a small payout. It's sometimes not even enough for the electric bill. If you're interested in it, my point here is do your research, because there's going to be a lot of research to do. So what I mean here, guys and girls and others, is if by chance you want to get into the actual process of trying to get that token on any cryptocurrency and get a payout, make sure you do your research. There's going to be a lot of it that needs to happen. There's going to be a lot of it that you're going to have to double check and go back and find out if it's actually real or not, because there's so much misinformation floating around anymore. But once you do get down to the brass tacks of it, the way it works is there are a bunch of computers that are networked together, and some of them take care of this, some of them take care of this, but the end users that are making the money from it, their computers are acting as the ledger, essentially, making sure that all transactions are done the way they're supposed to and that everything matches up. Because the algorithms originally could have been hacked by now, they have been upgrading them and will continue to upgrade them, and they will always be upgraded as computers and the speed of computers increase. So in order to stay on top of the game, you almost need to be able to upgrade your equipment or add to your equipment on a fairly regular basis. It's certainly something that seems like to me is for hobbyists or people that have already made money in it and they can invest and double down and spend $2,000 to $4,000 per video card and have up to 10 in one computer trying to do these transactions. It's up to you guys. At least now, hopefully, you got a little bit more information about it and can make a better informed choice on cryptocurrency. Second thing I was going to talk about, net neutrality. Woo! Bet you're almost tired of that one, aren't you? Like I said earlier, I had wrote this thing that I was going to record on it, and in fact, it's right here. And it's not that this has become outdated by any means, right? And I might just go ahead and read what I had here. And there's one part of it that seems a little bit confusing because it sounds like I'm contradicting myself. But in the instance of where DSL was deregulated, that's the opposite of what happened word-wise. Whenever I say that in that area, that was whenever the government said, no, you will follow these rules, you will only do this. The deregulation happened to the companies where they actually became regulated. It's the same thing with Ajit Pai, where he's using the term network freedom or net freedom in the backwards way. A lot of the times legalese is like that. But, you know, what do I know? Alright, so in my little story that I had wrote up here, I started out talking about the governor, Steve Bullock, which that should tell you how long ago I wrote this. But he was making a big stand at that time, saying you can't stop us from protecting our net neutrality, and here's what we're going to do. First off, we're a municipality and we're a state, and if you think you're going to treat us the same way you're going to treat your consumer level people, you're wrong. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to put these bylaws and laws in effect in Montana so that if you do decide to do any kind of provisioning to the network traffic and saying this is a video packet and this is an email packet, you're snooping on us. So no, we won't do business with you. We'll find somebody else. That was a big stand. I mean, that was phenomenal. That was phenomenally big. And they're not the only ones doing it. Other little states and bigger states, whenever it comes to size, not data, have been doing the same thing. Where if it's a state contract with a cable, internet, DSL, fiber provider, if by chance there is any way of them doing these sorts of things for network freedom, as it was, giving it fast lanes or slower priority, then they're just not going to do business with them, which I think is a wonderful first step. There's other things that have happened too, but let's get into this one, shall we? Instead of trying to write law and go before lobbyists or interest groups that get Washington to move on fixing the issue of network freedom, the governor of Montana did something interesting. Some states actually consume through municipalities and state works have vast amounts of data that they push on a daily basis. Knowing this to be truer for Montana than some states, its governor put out a mandate hoping to secure net neutrality for them as a consumer. That link will be in the description. Governor Steve Bullock actually cites the same points of a lot of us as consumers have had issues with in the past than even today. Being that now the internet is a Title I, not a Title II, which there is a big difference, the FCC has little to no ability to impose rules on internet anymore, and that it should fall to the states to decide. However, the FCC now wants to prevent states from being able to self-regulate based upon consumer desires. Also to note here, ISP companies are trying to defer to the wide open ruling the Internet Troll of 2017, Ajit Pai, set forth in that they can hide in anonymity while doing what they like. However, the documents put forth by Ajit's group and the ISP companies are in conflict with one another in that regard. As far as ISP companies preventing net neutrality on the same state level, as far as I can tell, they can't at the moment. Hence my campaign to get everyone that was willing to contact our local government offices and begging off on please don't let this happen. And I did do that. And surprisingly enough, I've actually got email responses. There is a thing called NPRM, Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Whenever the FCC wants to do something to make it law or procedure to kick a state's ability out of the window to defend us as consumers, it has to file this. Several months before the FCC downvoted net neutrality, it did file something, but not specifically. Several months before the FCC downvoted net neutrality, it did file something, but not specifically what should have been in clear language stating that a state has no right to supersede the FCC or continue with the state's net neutrality rulings of past or future tenses. Rather, what was filed was not definitive at all. In preemption of the state's rights, rather a conversation asking about it. So in short, because of all of this, states in the USA currently can enforce net neutrality law if so wished, but no one wants to bear the symbol of the martyr or be the ones that get outcast, it seems. And let's be upfront about it, the federal government can and does regularly put up roadblocks, or they flat out kill things that the states are trying to pass and do on the benefit of consumers. A bill last year, for example, to restore the privacy legislation related to internet service providers has met constant pushback and still has not made any headway whatsoever. However, with all this said, states are finding unique ways to combat the FCC and the Internet Troll of 2017, aka AgitPie. Some are not focusing on net neutrality bills or even wrote, but instead making it impossible for telecom companies to do projects or build up their networks if they break net neutrality or intend on using fast or slow lanes for government or state facilities. Unfortunately, all we can do is elect a new set of politicians that want what we want, that we can only improve by doing our own research on possible candidates, what they stand for, what their views are on particular items, and if we feel we can trust them on doing the right thing for us. But the secondary part of that statement is this is the most important thing. You have to vote for the person that you think is going to be the best for what we want. I personally did call. And I called, I emailed, I texted, I tweeted, I did all these things. And my local politicians, going from the whip all the way up to the Kentucky governor. I mean, I went through the whole list and I did it all. And to my surprise and to their credit, I actually did get responses from them. And in Kentucky, it seems like everybody I got a hold of is anti-network freedom, in true freedom being net neutrality. It seems like everybody wants to let go of the internet and let these companies reign. It won't be good for us. We need to go back in time a little bit, and we need to remember why these things were put in place to begin with. It's because these companies had strongholds and they could set their own terms, and we had to just simply accept them. There was no protection for the end user whatsoever. And that's where we're going next. First one is Mitch McConnell. He says that net neutrality is bad and he won't be doing anything about it to get reinstated, and very openly kisses on AgitPie's neck while saying so, in my humble opinion. Brett Guthrie, member of Congress, is the 2nd District Kentucky Assistant Whip. Says, for 20 years we did great, but the last couple of years, ... So Agit is right and we should blindly trust him. Again, I paraphrased not their exact wording, but was the gist of the letter that I got. Attorney General Andy Beshear, though, opposes this change. Seems like he is the only one around here that gets that the fancy words, what they are and what they actually mean for people at the bottom. And last is Rand Paul. He has almost always, anytime asked, openly opposed the people of Kentucky, it seems to me. Not only on this net neutrality piece, but maybe you should look into the guy. And what do I mean by all these pretty words? Because I did say that. In so much, Agit, Rand, and others point to the time before net neutrality rules as a flourishing time for the internet. The internet, as we know it and use it, with streaming services out of the wazoo like we have today. didn't really show itself until the last 6 or 8 years. And granted, streaming was in its infancy and was here about 2003 forward, but we'll get to that in a minute. When did all this really start? When did net neutrality begin? It was roughly in about 2004 and 2005. There was a precursor that happened the year before in 2004, but 2005 was really whenever it started to develop. So this is where I have a big beef, because everybody's like, Obama's net neutrality, and then they throw their dice at the wall and see what happens. It wasn't Obama. Now granted, Obama was a great president. He was very forward thinking. Some people like him, some people don't like him, and you know what, your opinion is your opinion. I'm perfectly happy with that, as I am with my own. But Obama wasn't the one that put this stuff in place. So let's get that out the window. It was actually during George W. Bush. You know, everybody does want to put Obama on it, but really, even though, again, he was a boss, he was always doing things to encourage innovation in the tech world. And look where it got us. There was so much innovation that happened so quick because the government stepped in. That's right. But anyway, let's go look at some numbers and stuff, right? So, back to YouTube. Or to YouTube. Everybody knows YouTube nowadays. Let's look at it. It has grown tenfold on its daily views to 1 billion hours watched daily by users. That's incredible. Now let's see how fast YouTube gets broken down by these ISPs that don't want that bandwidth on their backbones anymore. And now that they can do what they can do, they can charge YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Apple, anybody, so they're on those fast lanes, which is only going to hurt us in the end. It will equate to more ads. It will equate to probably poor quality things being made because less money is there, etc. YouTube will more than likely have to pay to be on this fast lane, or it will load indefinitely until you give up. This is something that is actually possible. I'll get to that in a minute. However, in my humble opinion, it seems like on the day of that vote, on the hour after that vote, that Verizon Wireless has said, nah, screw you, YouTube. We don't want you here anymore. But their little Go90 app that really doesn't compete with YouTube at all, never buffers, never has an issue. I on a hunch checked it out, and I was right. I usually keep it disabled off my phone, but I wonder why that is. I wonder why their stuff is starting to work so well, and the stuff that other people use on a daily basis is starting to slow down or buffer or just not be there. The only innovations on the internet most people are aware of have been during these net neutrality rules. Let's look at some of them, like Spotify, launched in 2008, Audible launched in 2008, Apple TV launched in 2006, but you had to have an iPad or a iDevice from Apple to be able to stream to the Apple TV. So if you had an iTunes account and you rented something through iTunes, you could then stream it to that device that was at your TV, but it itself wouldn't automatically stream from the internet. That didn't come around until 2008. Chromecast itself didn't launch until 2013, and Pandora Radio was a thought in 2001, but this was fairly close to when Napster got shut down, and that might have had something with how late it took for them to come out. In the past, before net neutrality, we had Netflix. Yes, we did, but 1998, it was a website or mailer that you could rent DVDs from, and that was it. They shipped it to you in the mail. We can see example after example of tech companies holding off, even with experimenting the streaming services, because even in the 2000s and until 2004, ISPs would still block basic services like voice over IP. You can cite here Madison River case, 2004, which was a court case, which ultimately was dropped by both parties, and $15,000 was deposited in the United States Treasury for the FCC to drop its inquiry. Something else to consider, FCC Chairman Michael Powell in 2004 did the following. He came up with a set of non-discriminating principles, which he called the principles of network freedom. Sound familiar? It should, because this is what actual network freedom is. The first principle of this is freedom to access content. Second principle is freedom to run applications. The third is freedom to attach devices. And 4 is freedom to obtain service plan information. Now, what a lot of people probably don't remember is before 2004, whenever you got a bill, it wasn't combined billing, as it were. They just didn't tell you what you were being charged for. So they could be charging you 2 or 3 times for the same thing and legally get away with it because it was in the terms of service that nobody ever reads about. That was an important thing, because later on that year, DSL was deregulated. Remember earlier, whenever I said it's the opposite? This is when the government stepped in and broke up DSL companies, ISDN companies, and even dial-up companies and said, hey, it's time for you to behave. Stopped acting like a bunch of cretins and overcharging in 2005. 1. Consumers are entitled to access the lawful internet content of their choice. 2. Customers are entitled to run applications and services of their choice subject to the needs of law enforcement. 3. Customers are entitled to connect to their choice of legal devices that do not harm the network. And 4. Consumers are entitled to competition among network providers, application and service providers, as well as content providers. And that, my friends, is where the story gets interesting, because the internet exploded at that point. The amount of users and in-home users per the world population went through such a dramatic increase, because at that point it started a little war in between all the companies, and that was a good thing for us. In 2005, Ford Net Neutrality has been in place until Edgett got his little temper tantrum approved by a downvote. So let's go back to 1995. That's right, strap on your AOL and Prodigy hats. CompuServe were on the way. The internet in 1995 had about 16 million daily users in 2004. Now in 2004, that number was more like 800 million, and that does look like a lot of growth, but that catches us up to that deregulation, which is actually the government stepping in, not the other way around. Well, let's look at some other numbers. In 1995, the world population, end quote, had an access of about 0.4%. Not 0.04, 0.4. And in 2004, that was up to 12.7%. And again, that looks like a lot of growth. But let's look at what happened after 2004, when the first net neutrality rules were put into place. In 2005, we had 88 million users that were daily, and 13.9% of the world population was subscribed. And in 2012, we had 2,497 million daily users, and 35.7% of world users had access or were subscribed. Before other countries' governments and the United States put network neutrality into place, having had network neutrality rules as well, the world only saw a 11.3% growth to end users. This was before net neutrality, right? Page 4. As governments smacked the taste out of the mouth of telecom companies, or big ISP, causing local DSL agents as well to behave, and local dial-up companies to behave, the world enjoyed a 21.8% growth of world population granted access and or subscribed, and a 32% growth of daily users, where in the previous 9 years there was only a 3.1496% growth, which is not pi or pi, although both sound the same, but that number is actually 3.145. The internet did not really grow until the governments of the world realized how the internet can aid us daily, how we can use it as business and how people can create their own little safe spaces inside of it. And so the government stepped in and allowed those things to happen for us, in the United States anyway, and other countries did the same. Big ISPs know where the money is. They always have, and they have been trying to get what they see as their back pay. It is in charging us for everything and sometimes twice for the same thing. And if you don't believe that, look at Australia and their mobile market. There's other instances too, but I think I've gone on just about enough about this. Also, our early internet. If you remember, I do, 5 meg to 500 meg per month at $30 to $70 plus, if you were a business, that doubles instantly because you said the B word. And on top of the B word, if you wanted to get extra emails, you had to pay an extra $15 for more than 300 emails monthly, which was insane. And then they would charge you by the stinking email. Does that sound like, cell phone plans by the gigabyte, right? Or megabyte as it used to be. And I'm wondering if anybody else remembers this besides me. I know that people that are younger than 10 years myself probably have no clue about any of this, and rightfully so. You shouldn't have to know about this. Oh yeah. And don't forget the ads. Oh, God love them. All the ads we used to get. Jeez. I remember on Prodigy, whenever you first opened up the login screen, there was 4 to 6 ads on it. Some of them were for them, some of them were for other companies. CompuServe had maybe 1 or 2. AOL was just a plethora of buy this. Even before you could get to your email, there was at one point, 6 or 7 screens you had to click no thanks on in order to even get to your stuff that you wanted to be looking at. It was insane. Again, that was before 2004. If the ISP companies get their way, it's my opinion and other people's opinions. This is what they want without actually saying it. It isn't hard to read between the lines, really. They want to charge the major and small companies as well as the consumers for access to these fast lanes, which will hurt startups and or companies trying to innovate and become startups and or be acquisitioned by other companies, because they don't have capital for that. Not only are they getting paid by us for our bandwidth that we use on a monthly basis, right? They're also going to charge the big companies that are sending stuff to your house for the same thing. And then we'll also have to pay, before it's over with, I'm sure, for access to that. So we're paying to give access, they pay to give access, and then we pay to get the access to keep our internet at the same speed. And don't think this can't happen. It can. So they want to charge customers for fast lane access, or better yet, the fast lane privileges, and then tier packages for bandwidth and content packages for video streaming, and then content packages on the internet, much like they're giving us on our TV. So if you want Nickelodeon and Disney, then you have to get this package and this package, whenever it should just be one package. I mean, come on. Let's think about that for a second. Same thing with sports. If you have sports, then how many packages do you have to have in order to watch boxing and or anything else that you find interesting? I mean, it's ridiculous how many things you have to subscribe to on a cable company to get what you actually want. And in fact, it's preventative. The only thing that they're doing is getting people less interested in TV. So you've got your video streaming package, so that if you want to be streaming YouTube or Hulu, then you've got to have this. And then also there will be probably podcast audio streaming services. So if you want to listen to the audio side, they'll say it takes up more bandwidth somehow. Then that's another add-on for $15. By the way, the video streaming is like $45. And then let's have a business package. So if you want to get some email from like Gmail or from your own personal POP servers, then here's another package for you. You can see where this is going. The news sites, etc. You'll have to have different packages to get different things. And before long, your bill is going to double or triple for the same thing that you already had. Why? Why? It's not necessary. If they weren't making money, they wouldn't have been doing what they've been doing for years. They wouldn't have been expanding their networks for years. They wouldn't have been changing out equipment They wouldn't have been giving people equipment for free and not charging them for it if they weren't making money somehow. Ooh, it's just an aggravation source for me, because whenever a company gets so big, it stops being about people and it starts being about that bottom dollar, not top, the bottom dollar, and how much they can make. And if they can find a way to squeeze other companies that use their service and the end users, don't think they won't. That's what's coming down the line. That's my prediction for the next 5 years, is they're going to get these things put in place and we are going to be miserable, and people are going to be like, wow, we really missed that net neutrality. So much for freedom. As sad as that is. Granted, the companies that are big ISP will get richer off of this, but how will it help us as the end user if most of us are already having troubles making the ends come together on a month-to-month basis? You know, it's almost like stepping back to the Stone Age, if you think about it, because you'll have, let's say, 100 meg service. But what if whom you're streaming from can only afford 10 meg service, and there's a lot of people trying to stream from them? That means that you're going to buffer, and it's never going to go through. It's just going to sit there and spin, and eventually you'll get so tired of it, you'll give up on it. That's sad. That's how things electronically die. And that's not going to spark innovation. And furthermore, what if the companies decide they're going to make their own? What if they're going to make their own Netflix, or their own Disney Channel, or their own Hulu, or your favorite podcast? You know that with the way that things are set up right now, they can block your access. They don't have to give a reason, because they've changed their terms of service for us as end users to accept anything that they want to give us. And there's not much we can do about it as long as it's wrote 6 months in advance and we don't even have to see it. So there's that too. And that was part of the reason why I was so anti-AgitPi getting all that put in place, downvoted, and then moving it from the FCC over to the other side of the government, because let's also be upfront about that. Anyway, the other branch of the government that is now going to be taking care of the Network Freedom Act, as it were, they can't even enforce things on companies. I mean, granted, if they wanted to, they could knock me in the teeth, but whenever it comes to putting law and things into place, companies don't even respect that side of the government. It's been done time and time again. I mean, if they're going up against FCC, what are they going to do to the other people? I mean, they don't care. They're not going to adhere by this stuff. And the thing that was most frightening to me was the day of the repeal on like Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, other websites as well that were ISP based, like Spectrum and etc. Their stance on net neutrality, the wording, changed. You can look it up in the internet histories, as it were. So net neutrality is pretty well not done yet, because there's still a big fight to have. And in fact, this kind of backs up everything I've been saying from the get-go, that it makes no sense to me that the person that used to be the corporate lawyer for a telecom company that provides internet for us as consumers, that the ex-lawyer of said company, Verizon, is the one that's now the FCC chairman. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because in the past, FCC chairman, right, they were people that had backgrounds in the telecom area. So they were either people that were producers for TV stations. I'm talking about like top tier producers that would decide on content for nationwide type things, or they were people that were involved in infrastructure and hardware and had been for years and years and years. So they had a vast understanding of what the thing should or should not be. But then you got this guy that's a lawyer. The only thing he's done is corporate law, really, for Verizon, and has done nothing but nitpick at network neutrality and or actual network freedom, which originally was what it was going to be. Gets in and gets it abolished. Well, now the FCC is investigating AgitPi for corruption. Yay! So hopefully it will all be reversed and network neutrality will get put back in place, so that we as consumers don't get bent over that proverbial barrel yet again and have to pay so much more for less or the same as what we've already had. Anyway, I think that's long enough. I think that's a big enough rant for network neutrality. Remember, it's not too late. Contact your Senate, your Congress people, legislation bodies. Let them know what you think about it, because my understanding from what I read, what I heard, what I looked at on the news reports from credible sources were that there was a vast majority of people that hated this idea and did not want it put in place. They did not want things downvoted. They did not want for the government to step out of that. Was it fear motivated? Was it logic motivated? I don't know about that. But I do know that, well, let's put it this way. When was the last time that a major corporation made a decision that was going to affect you and it was positive, right? Anyway, this has been Shane from Greenstone Services, and if you found anything interesting in this video or something that you want to share, please feel free to do so. It would only make me happy, and it actually does do something for the channel. Beyond that, if you happen to be new here and this is the first time you've seen me go on a little rant, as it were, don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you join our family and join in on the conversation. As always, think before you click. This has been Shane, and you guys have a wonderful day.